Thanks for listening to my jokes. I am Darren Madison, and
I'm Chris Larson.
thank you so much, everyone, for being here today. The purpose of Energy University is to bring together experts, policymakers, grassroots activists, and organizations and the public in a conversation about what it will take to meet our energy goals in Wisconsin. Nope, go ahead.
That's mine.
Yeah.
Okay. Specifically, Energy University is built around the following three premises that we can all agree on. Number one, climate crisis is real. It is already impacting our communities across Wisconsin, and these impacts will only continue to get worse without decisive action. We all understand that the only way to solve the climate crisis is to transition to a 100% clean, renewable energy economy as quickly as possible. Number two, we can all agree that the current status of energy production in Wisconsin does not meet our renewable portfolio goals, and legislative action is needed ASAP to get us there. Wisconsin needs to rapidly change its energy policy and portfolio in order to address the mounting climate crisis. And then three, artificial intelligence, or what we call artificial intelligence, and data centers are greatly increasing energy demand, convincing Wisconsin's utilities to invest even more in fossil fuel energy production in order to meet the demands. Regardless of specific views on AI or data centers, we can all agree that greatly expanding our energy usage makes our shared goal of 100% renewable, a renewable energy economy much harder to achieve.
In conclusion, transitioning to 100% clean energy economy as quickly as possible is the shared understanding and purpose in which we've convened this space. We have invited panelists with a range of expertise and viewpoints, and we have a range of representations of folks in the audience. At times, different panelists and participants of Energy University may not agree at all on the best way to achieve this fully, specifically that goal of 100% clean energy economy. And guess what? That's okay. While we can agree on the path forward, we hope that Energy University kickstarts more conversations about the barriers and opportunities towards meeting our energy goals while protecting the planet we call home.
You know what you did.
Yeah.
Thank you all for taking the time. I know there's a ton of push and pull happening in the building all the time. There's always a lot going on. So taking the time today to be able to come and share the space with us and be able to maybe challenge what your notions already are, learn a thing or two that's new, and then hopefully engage in a conversation thereafter about where we go. And this is the first of three, so please mark your calendar. We'll have all the dates up there for the future two. They're all on Wednesdays, but the times change just to keep you on your toes. We do have food in the back, which I'm surprised to see not everybody has grabbed yet. And that was donated by, I'll give shout out to Faith in Place, to Laura and Shazad. Where did they go? There you are, you're right there. So do your thing, please partake, bagels, foods, and enjoy. And let's get on with it, shall we? You want me to do this now? I'm gonna take your part. Okay. Did you take my part? Okay. Thank you to we're gonna start. Okay, thank you to Dr. Joel Charles for presenting and moderating our first session. Joel. Dr. Charles is a family medicine doctor. He is the board chair and co-founder of Healthy Climate Wisconsin, a group that empowers health professionals to advocate for Wisconsinites' health through clean energy solutions. He also serves on the board of the Wisconsin Medical Society and the Wisconsin Medical Society Foundation. And also have you know, I think he was the first one in the room today. I think he's been here for at least an hour, just getting ready and being fully prepared. So thank you, Dr. Charles. We appreciate you.
Yeah.
Take it over to you.
Thanks for having me. And I really want to thank everybody for being here. My name is Joel Charles. I'm a rural family doc in the Kickapoo River Valley, and I'm co-founder of Healthy Climate Wisconsin. I think it's important for you to know who's up here and talking to you and what they care about and what they want. I grew up in the low-income Tank Park neighborhood of Green Bay, and I saw a lot of people suffer. And I knew what it was like to suffer myself. And in church on Sundays and Wednesdays, I took seriously the Sermon on the Mount and its call to take care of and empower people who are suffering. As a kid, I did that by protecting other kids from bullies. As an adult, I do that by being a doctor, using my ears to listen to my patients, and my voice to protect my community from corporate bullies. As a doctor, what I do is simple but hard. First, I care about my patients. So I help them clarify their values and what they want, and I bring evidence to help them make choices to achieve their values. I believe this is an essential role that health professionals can play in this moment in our society, but it takes courage to speak up publicly. I'm here because I care about my community, and in my role as a rural family doc and in Healthy Climate Wisconsin, I get to see a mosaic view of my community and this state as a whole. What I see is that people feel like they're getting screwed, and what I hear is that people who have the skills and desire to make this system better are not empowered to do so. The key takeaways today are that energy is essential to human well-being, and electricity is increasingly becoming primary to our well-being. People have overlapping values for our system, but our electricity system, its incentives and its decision-making structures are based on outdated and limited technologies. Those outdated and limited technologies are struggling to deliver access and affordability and can't deliver on our other values. Least of all, a fast transition to a 100% clean and resilient system. We have a clean, mature technologies available, mainly solar, wind, batteries, EVs, and distributed power plants, and that can deliver on our values. Building a lot of clean energy fast and letting everyone do it at all scales is the best way to keep prices down and meet our other values. Clean, mature technologies are creating new coalitions that cross traditional party boundaries. And Wisconsin could have a shared project of building a better electricity system that works for all Wisconsinites. But investor-owned utilities benefit from the old system, and they see the new potential coalition, and they want to keep us divided. The legislature has to have the courage to listen, to name a shared vision, and to act in order for us to embark on that shared project. Pretty basic. Energy is essential to human well-being. It determines most of the things that we really care about. At the same time, people have varied and overlapping values of what we want out of our energy and electricity systems, and our current regulatory structure is only designed to deliver some of them. Growing electricity demand is a central reality to which we must adapt, but it's also an opportunity. Energy demand is going to shift from other sources to the grid by electrification of most end uses. And together, these are going to be a much bigger deal in terms of demand growth than AI. By 2040, many experts expect electricity demand will grow by 50%. This is a good thing because getting energy through electricity is up to twice as efficient as combustion, making it cheaper, and it's far cleaner. But this also means electricity will be even more central to our economic and overall well-being. Imagine how upset your constituents get about the price of gas or propane heating. Now take all that anger and combine it with how upset they already get about their electric bills. Electrification is a reality we have to deal with. It's inevitable because the machines are simply better, but how we respond matters. It's important to understand the history of our electricity system and its regulatory structure. Due to the high upfront cost of building power generation, transmission, and the distribution grid, electric utilities at their inception were considered natural monopolies. Wisconsinites needed electricity at reasonable prices. Utilities wanted their 10% return. So we formed a social contract that gave utilities monopoly rights in exchange for that guaranteed rate of return, for providing electricity at a reasonable cost and submitting to central regulation. Mostly this led to investor-owned for-profit utilities and municipal utilities. And where those corporations didn't see adequate profit, rural folks self-organized into cooperatives. Rural electric co-ops have a different decision-making and incentive structures, and the regulatory portions of my talk today are going to focus primarily on investor-owned utilities. I'm happy to answer questions during the Q&A to give my take on how these changing technologies affect rural co-ops. For investor-owned utilities, rate structures incentivize building generation, not efficiency and none of our other values. So we needed a regulatory body, and Wisconsinites formed the Public Service Commission as our voice to enforce the social contract with utilities with the primary goal of affordability and reliability. That old system was probably the best we could do with the technologies we had available, but it came with a lot of downsides. That system was designed based on limited tools we had to build. Mostly large-scale centralized electricity generation with fossil fuels and almost no storage and almost no ability to shift demand around to cut off peaks. So to ensure reliability, utilities had to build to the 99th percentile of a peak electricity demand on the worst day of the year. So we ended up with an expensive, overbuilt system where most of its capacity sits unused most of the year. Utilities didn't mind overbuilding because they make money by building stuff and charging for it. That system limits fair access to electricity for users primarily due to cost. It also costs us in health. From the moment of conception to their last breath, Wisconsinites are made sick by air pollution from fossil fuels. It causes preterm births, stillbirths, delayed cognitive development in children, asthma, lung disease, heart attacks, cancer, and dementia. We could save 1,900 lives each year in Wisconsin if we powered an electrified economy with 100% clean energy. 1,900 lives a year. That system is hurting the stability of the climate, which is essential for our civilization, and it cannot deliver adequate resilience to climate instability. Make no mistake, climate change is real, it's here, it's caused by us, it's bad, it's gonna get a lot worse, but there's a lot we can do about it. Unfortunately, our utilities system is not designed to adapt with the speed necessary to transition in the face of climate change, in large part because that system has a fundamental lack of freedom and democracy of who can participate in planning and building it, and lacks fairness in who benefits. The social contract with utilities is breaking down because it is not delivering its primary promise of affordable electricity, and because the old processes and technologies are not designed to and cannot deliver most of the other values we hold dear. In particular, it can't deliver a fast transition to 100% clean energy or the resilience needed in the face of present and worsening climate instability. That contract is breaking down because of the failure of the PSC to adapt its culture and methods to the full range of mature technologies available. That contract is breaking down because over the last 100 years, the legislature has given the DNR and PSC inconsistent direction, capacity, and authority. But we have other mature technologies that allow us to change the social contract with utilities, to build a system which incorporates more of our values, so Wisconsinites can claim the right to participate in planning and building that system, to not only meet the challenges of the moment, but to help all Wisconsinites thrive. These other mature technologies are mainly solar, wind, batteries, EVs, and the ability to have all of our devices communicate and work together to shift demand and give power back to the grid, known as virtual power plants or distributed power plants. And lastly, interregional transmission that allows us to share clean, cheap power between regions when the weather isn't suitable in a particular region. The old system can't deliver maximum affordability. Coal and gas power plants are machines that burn fuel. Renewables are machines with no fuel costs. Humans, by their nature, learn and get better at building machines over time, doing it cheaper and more efficiently. This is called the learning curve. But with the exception of the shale boom and methane gas, the cost of fossil fuel electricity has essentially not decreased in the last 100 years because any learning curves in how we build the power plants has been eaten up by it being harder and more expensive to find the fuels. Meanwhile, since 2010, the price of solar has come down over 90%, wind down 70%, batteries 90%, and they're going to keep dropping. We can also save money by not overbuilding. With connected devices in our homes and garages, we can now bundle thousands of devices to shift demand, to shave off peaks. We can store clean power and put it back to the grid for our neighbors to use and pay people for doing it. Both mean we don't have to overbuild as much. The greater flexibility of scale, particularly in solar batteries, means flexibility of who can contribute power to the grid. And lastly, renewables are so much cleaner. This doesn't have to be a zero-sum situation. Based on their actions, utilities seem to be viewing both shifting technologies and demand growth as a threat, trying to avoid competition by keeping end users from becoming electricity producers. But that kind of zero-sum thinking only applies either from a place of greed or prioritizing institutions over communities. With electrification increasing demand potentially by 50%, there's enough opportunity for everyone. Utilities can grow and get their 10% from building clean energy, and we can make more space for farmers and homeowners, renters and industry, and communities to produce and share real amounts of power on the grid. We Energies made use of panic over energy demand growth to propose a polluting methane gas plant that will likely kill 260 people over its lifespan, a plant that will likely be obsolete and saddle people with high rates, a plant that was unnecessary both because Microsoft plans to power its own data centers with renewables and because We Energies could have more quickly and cheaply built renewables given they only get 5% of their power from renewables. This debacle is a clear failure of utility rate structure incentives. The public overwhelmingly opposed this project in the largest public engagement in PSC history. That the PSC and DNR approve this plan is a failure of our legislative direction setting for those agencies and of the culture and processes of those agencies. Utilities are overplaying their hand. They're proposing more unnecessary, expensive, polluting methane gas plants in rural and urban communities throughout the state. With utilities left unchecked, we will get a centralized, expensive, polluting, unfair electricity system which is brittle and vulnerable to climate-driven storms. That will produce anger among electricity users of all scales and potential electricity producers because people, for different reasons, feel like the system isn't working for them. But we can go down a better path now, making full use of the mature technologies available to set a clear direction to move quickly toward a 100% clean system with full and fair access, with distributed control and economic benefit, and resilience in the face of climate change. Also, our people, businesses, and institutions can thrive. That does mean building utility-scale renewables and batteries, but it also means giving people, businesses, and institutions the ability to produce and benefit both from their own renewables and batteries and from shifting demand. It means building large-scale renewables in a way that rural communities, farmers in particular, adequately benefit from providing power to people and businesses in our cities, and empowering urban folks to meet their own electricity needs. Most of all, it means including those constituencies in the process of designing that system. As I said, being a rural family doc, and in my role in HCW, I get the privilege to see a mosaic of the people both in my community and Wisconsin. We have real divisions and fraught decisions to make. Call me naive, but when I ask people honest questions, what I see is that we have mostly shared core values. I believe that building an electricity system which serves Wisconsinites is a shared project which can begin to heal our divisions. I see farmers who want to be able to provide cheap, clean power to low-income rural and urban folks who need it. I see business and industry leaders who want cheap, reliable, resilient power. I see electricians and linesmen and even local utility leaders who just want to do a good job taking care of their communities and can be the heroes who embark us on this project. For legislators and inside and outside this room, it's going to take a lot of courage to own your values, to listen to the public, to synthesize it all and set a vision, and to put that vision into legislation, to design constituents into the ongoing process. The Public Service Commission needs you to give it clear values to prioritize, clear direction, access to quality information, and the authority and capacity to get us there, and clear directives for how to include the public in this 30-year project. This is a familiar story and challenge in Wisconsin. In the late 19th century, the well-being of Wisconsinites was heavily dependent on the ability to move people and goods by railroads. Rail corporations benefited from decades of monopoly, and through arrogance, greed, and complacency in the power they had over the legislature, they overcharged farmers, small manufacturers and merchants for freight, while giving sweetheart deals to large-scale shippers.
Transitioning away from the debt recovery, the
Anger at railroads' abuse and the complicity of elected officials in it produced a powerful coalition that not only resulted in railroad reform, but the dismantling of the party boss system and the innovation of direct party primaries. Similar dynamics are at play now, particularly as electricity becomes even more central to Wisconsinites' well-being. And similarly powerful coalitions will arise in response. My son, Finn, was born August 27th, 2018. I remember holding him so fragile in my hands at our room at Gunderson and La Crosse just after he was born. And I looked out the window and what I saw looked like a hurricane. It was an unprecedented climate-driven storm. Knowing what I know about climate change, I thought, what have I brought this child into? Even as a doctor, I cannot fully protect him from the storm that is coming for our society. And what about my patients? The other kids in the Kickapoo Valley who don't have a dad for a doctor? Who's going to protect them? That storm broke dams and flooded the Kickapoo River Valley and Coon Valley watershed, flooding many of my patients out of their homes. When my son was a couple days old, I went to help my neighbors and patients in the Kickapoo Valley clean up. I saw people from all backgrounds, from all over the Midwest. I saw people who know that when a storm comes, we pull together to protect each other and rebuild. We didn't know that storm would hit when it did, but our society knows climate change is coming, and it is hitting us in a moment of deep division in our society, a division that corporate bullies profit from by intentionally keeping us divided by race and class, by whether we live in a city or on a farm, whether we learned on the job site or in the classroom, by whether we work with a framing nailer or a spreadsheet. When I was a kid, I fought bullies with my fists, but I know now that the better path would have been to bring together the kids on the playground so they protected each other as a group. As legislators, that is your calling now. I'm not here to tell you exactly what policies to pass, but as a doctor, I understand how to help people make fraught decisions. You can choose to empower all Wisconsinites in a shared project of quickly planning and building a clean electricity system that works for all of us, a project that can unite us, a project that makes not only our electricity system resilient to the storms ahead, but our social bonds as well. But only if you stand up to the bullies dividing us. Make the utilities help or make them get out of the way, because we've got work to do. So with that, we're going to pass it over to Arjun Krishnaswami, who's going to introduce himself.
Thank you, Dr. Charles. Can you guys hear me all right? Okay, great.
Yes.
Thank you. I feel really fired up by your remarks and by that laydown of what's ahead of us and why this work is so important. My name is Arjun Krishnaswami. I'm a senior fellow at the Federation of American Scientists, working on electricity policy. And previously, I served in the U.S. Department of Energy, working on implementation of the Inflation Reduction Act and electricity policy, and was also on the White House climate team. But I started my career as an environmental engineer working on freshwater resources. And I loved that work. I loved working on an issue that hit so close to home for so many people, on getting fresh water and protecting our freshwater resources for people. But the story in that work over and over again was that if we don't address the climate crisis, if we don't get off of a bad global warming scenario, then our freshwater resources are at risk, no matter how much we plan. and how much we work around the edges. We have to address the root cause. So that's what brought me to the energy world, where I've been working on mostly on power sector, clean electricity policy. And I am going to share a little bit about what we're seeing across the power sector, where we are in terms of clean energy deployment, and what's stopping us from being where we need to be. I'm working across a lot of states. I'm based in Washington, D.C., working on a number of state-level projects, and we're seeing a lot of similar things in different states, a lot of similar problems that we have to address. So jumping in, what's going on in the electricity sector today? Here's a picture of our national electricity generation. The story here, we still get about 60% of our electricity in the country from fossil fuels, from coal-fired and gas-fired power plants. Another almost 20% comes from nuclear, and the rest is from a mix of renewables. So the bulk of our electricity system today is still powered by large fossil fuel-fired power plants, centralized power plants, owned by utilities or large power companies. In Wisconsin, that general story is similar, though with a couple key differences. In Wisconsin, the percentage is actually higher. 75% of state generation comes from coal-fired and gas-fired power plants, and with an even larger share of coal, and a relatively small, compared to the national average, amount of renewables. How's that changed over the last decade? While there has been some growth in solar, and there's certainly some renewable deployment, the biggest trend in Wisconsin over the last 10 years is a switch from some coal to more gas. A lot of the coal-fired power plants in this country and in the state are older. We've got a lot of newer, large gas-fired power plants, which, as Dr. Charles talked about, carry these same issues for us, of warming the planet and driving local harmful air pollution. So as a whole, in Wisconsin and in the rest of the country, the rate of building out new clean energy is far too low. These pink bars on the right are the level of deployment that we would see if we were hitting the lowest cost scenarios. So the scenarios with the lowest total cost electricity system, which means lowest cost for customers. And in 2024, we're coming in that's a record year for clean energy deployment across the country. We're coming in right at the low end of that, of where we have to be. And that's with federal support and federal incentives. So we're not building clean energy as fast as is even economic, let alone as fast as we need to avoid the worst impacts of the climate crisis. The reasons for that, are really, we've been looking at what is stopping projects besides economics. As Dr. Charles mentioned, the cost of clean energy is now competitive with other resources. It's lower, it's the lowest cost option, but we're still not building new clean power as fast as we need to be. And that's because of several issues. One is the process for connecting power plants to the grid is slow and gummed up, and does not favor it favors some traditional fossil fuel power plants over new clean energy. Some projects are facing financing issues, especially with the hamstringing of federal incentives. And this third one, broken utility incentives, is really critical. What we're seeing this in state after state, where the social contract, as Dr. Charles said, was not built for building out clean energy fast. It was built for an outdated electricity system, and was not designed to prioritize affordability nor clean energy. And so we're not using all the tools that we could be using, and instead we're building things that align with utility incentives, which are larger traditional power plants that have a safe return for the utility companies. And we're also facing barriers with the siting of new projects and also public buy-in, which gets at something that Dr. Charles talked about, that people don't feel bought into the vision of a clean energy transition, in part because we haven't prioritized the kinds of projects that really provide those benefits, the distributed projects, the beneficial electrification that saves people money, the ownership models that bring benefits to communities. And so all these things mean that we're not building clean energy as fast as we need to be building it. On top of that, rapid load growth makes that task harder. Now, there's a lot of talk about load growth from data centers because it's coming on so fast in the next couple of years, but we shouldn't see load growth as the enemy, right? I mean, Dr. Charles talked about this, where load growth, electricity demand growth is part of the solution to addressing climate change, in that we have to replace direct use of fuels in other places, from our vehicles and our factories and our buildings. We have to replace those with clean electricity. And there's a lot of benefits to doing so, and that increases demand. The issue is a lot of this load that is now forecast, it's coming on really fast, and we have to develop tools to build new clean energy fast enough to meet that demand. And that presents an opportunity for us. If we make sure that these large new sources of demand cover their costs, cover the cost of updating the grid, then we actually have an opportunity to alleviate pressure on other customers. But that's only if we put in place really smart policy around tariffs and rate designs and protections for customers that are going to be really important in the next couple of years. So that's the status of what's actually happening in the sector. In terms of policy, we also have we're going through a big transition in policy. Obviously, I don't need to tell you that. We had an electricity policy built on 3 pillars: incentives for clean electricity deployment and for transmission, planning and process improvements like new rules for how power plants connect to the grid, and standards and requirements on utilities and other power companies to cut their emissions. We now have two of those pillars are now gone. We've lost most of our federal deployment incentives, and we've lost standards on utilities and power companies. We still have some process improvements, for example, for interconnection rules for grid operators. But what that means is the role of the states is more important than ever. And in this list of barriers that we have that I walked through, states have a really important, if not the most important role in addressing those barriers of making sure the process connects to the grid, working with the grid operator, which for Wisconsin is called MISO, to make sure that we can connect clean energy to the grid fast, and that we're prioritizing new clean energy projects that can be built very quickly, improving the siting process to make sure that to improve buy-in from communities and get projects built, reforming the broken utility incentives and repairing this social contract and regulatory structure between the PSC and the utilities and the public, and taking advantage of the full set of tools like distributed resources that can spread the benefits more equitably and increase buy-in in this vision. So let me end with this: we're at an inflection point in electricity. There's 2 paths we can go down. We can keep using the existing system, the existing structure, and kind of fiddle around the edges. And what that's likely to lead to is rapid demand growth meets an inability to build the tools we need to build, which means higher prices for customers, more climate pollution because we're building more emitting power plants, worse impacts for people. And as Dr. Charles noted, growing outrage at the consequences of that system. That's vision 1. Vision 2 is we really do the hard work of fixing our regulatory structures, of bringing new tools into the mix, of bringing communities into the vision of a clean energy future, and changing how our electricity sector operates to match this new moment we're in. And if we go down that path, then we can have not just lower prices and more reliable electricity, but we can have a true clean energy future with lower long-term impacts and with a more democratic process that people feel bought into. So excited for the discussion, and thanks for having me.
Thank you, Arjun. We're going to pass it over to Tony now from Midwest Environmental Advocates, and I'm going to attempt to share some slides for him.
And I don't need them.
You don't need them? Okay. Thank you.
Yeah, well, thank you very much, Dr. Charles, and thanks to the legislators for having me. As was said, my name is Tony Wilkin Gibart. I'm the Executive Director of Midwest Environmental Advocates, and we're a public interest environmental law center. We have the honor and the privilege of getting to provide direct legal services and representation to individuals and grassroots groups in Wisconsin. We've been able to represent Healthy Climate Wisconsin before the Public Service Commission, and so that's a little bit of the perspective that I bring. How these policies and issues play out at the Public Service Commission for members of the public who want to advance and protect the public interest in these really important decisions. And I appreciate how Dr. Charles talked about the fact that our energy system really should embody our overlapping and shared values: environmental sustainability, response to climate, affordability, of course, reliability and innovation. Just basics, right? It's called the Public Service Commission. It's supposed to be ensuring that the state-sponsored utilities serve the public. When it approves new fossil fuel or any major piece of infrastructure, the Public Service Commission issues a certificate of public convenience and necessity. And while that is, kind of a wonky anachronistic term, if we really think about it, it means that when something is built, it should be because of our convenience and at our necessity. And so if that's the regulator's job, if that's what the PSC has been set up to do, that we really should be expecting it to take a broad analysis of Wisconsin's electricity system. It should have the ability to gather a lot of information. It should have the ability to make a plan and have some regulatory mechanisms to make sure that that plan is executed moving forward. But that's not what we're seeing from the Public Service Commission as a result of statutes, regulations, politics, the way things work. I think it'd be fair to say that the PSC has a kind of what I'll just call regulatory myopia, that we have put up blinders on what the institution that should be looking out for our interest can consider. Point is that the regulated entities, especially the public utilities, get to control what it is that the entity that's looking out for our interests sees. They get to put things in front of the PSC for decisions and approvals and control that information, and get to say, don't look at the larger context, the big picture, where our shared values come into play. So I just want to give really quick, I know we're running short on time, just some examples of how that plays out. For instance, we have state statutes that prevent the PSC from considering the impacts of air pollution, including greenhouse gas emissions. We have a lack of integrated resource planning mechanisms in the state of Wisconsin, which are present in most other states, where utilities have to have a plan and get that plan approved about how they're going to advance the public interest. We have a renewable portfolio standard that is outdated, that effectively prohibits the PSC from guiding our state's generation mix towards our renewable energy goals. There are a handful, maybe if we have time, we can talk about some of these things. There are a handful of regulatory tricks that utilities are able to use to evade full environmental review when they bring a major project like the Oak Creek Power Plant to the PSC. And then I would say, and Dr. Charles touched on this, the rise of data centers and the enormous increased demand that is projected makes these problems all the more pronounced. And it creates incentives for utilities that are consistent with some of the problems that Dr. Charles has talked about and that we'll talk about as we continue the conversation. So again, thanks for being here, and look forward to turning it over to Bryan.
Thanks, Tony.
Yeah, thanks everybody. I'm very happy to be here. Very happy that everybody else is here. This chair is extremely comfortable. I'm going to attempt to keep my remarks as brief as possible. Having heard the other panelists present, there is this, everyone asserted there are some shared values that I think connect us across geography, across class, across race. Those are really important to keep in mind. We also heard about what feels like this conundrum, like there are shared values and yet there are all these very serious roadblocks to being able to actually build and achieve a sustainable energy system that respects the basic human dignity of everybody that shares the planet, and that is everybody. So my name is Bryan Rogers. I'm the Environmental Justice Director at Walnut Way Conservation Corps, where I lead a statewide initiative called the Environmental Justice and Infrastructure Initiative. Walnut Way is a community-rooted organization at the intersection of environmental justice, regenerative agriculture, resident-led development, and increasingly political organizing, so that those most impacted by social, political, and economic and climate problems are actually the ones fighting against and shaping policies and the systems that determine our collective well-being. The Environmental Justice and Infrastructure Initiative connects those threads and builds a statewide network to fortify movement infrastructure that crosses race, crosses class, crosses geography, so that communities on the front lines of housing insecurity, of energy burden, and of climate chaos, again, are the ones shaping statewide solutions and implementing the solutions at the hyperlocal level. Since 2022, Walnut Way was the first grassroots, first Black organization to formally intervene in a Public Service Commission rate case proceeding. In that almost 3-year time span, we have learned a lot about that space, and we've heard some expert presentations about how that space is designed and some of the limitations that prevent us from being able to have more collective and, just solutions. And so I think one thing that we've learned is that the energy system is a really good object lesson when studying both the mechanisms and the manifestations of injustice. So when we think globally, fossil fuel economies fuel war, mass migration, ecological devastation. Millions of people are uprooted from their homes because of the voraciousness of the desire to extract resources from the land, the exploitation of labor on the land. And so there's nothing neutral about energy. It's always about power. It's always about geopolitics. And when we look locally, you were talking about investor-owned utilities. We have somebody in the room from We Energies here. It's the most powerful, the most profitable, and the most influential monopoly utility in the state of Wisconsin. If we look at what happens locally when we think about the energy system, we see those same patterns that play out at the global level. We see it at the hyperlocal level as well. So we see the extraction of wealth from communities that have been long disinvested in. We see skyrocketing and unaffordable bills that culminate in life-altering and sometimes life-ending disconnections. We see the delay, the systematic delay of investments in clean energy development. And we see the money that we pay to the monopoly utility used against our own interests in the form of massive lobbying efforts and legal fees and public relations campaigns. To say nothing of the charitable giving, right, that they do. So again, connecting the dots, we see at the hyperlocal level what the drive to dig, burn, dump. At the local level, these utilities, when and because they've been allowed to operate with such impunity for such a long time, they're the hyperlocal face of global extraction. And so that's part of our work that we do as a grassroots organization that is in the habit now of intervening in these public service commission proceedings. And whether that's on rate cases or on building harmful fossil fuel projects, It's political education, learning about how to expose the logics of this capitalist system, how it manufactures disposable populations. And we know that it does, whether we're talking about healthcare, whether we're talking about education, whether we're talking about energy, whether we're talking about housing. People are not held in any sort of dignified way by the systems that we participate in and the ones that we create. And so people are disposable, communities are disposable, the entire planet is on fire. And so I'm seeing the end. I am at the end. There are just some core values that I think that's really important for us to name explicitly into the ones that Dr. Charles began with, but that's collective self-determination, that the people most impacted by the problems are the ones that are closest to the power and the ones closest to being able to actually implement the solutions. Permanent affordability, under the premise and the guiding principle that energy is a basic human right. It should not be a commodity. It should not be a profit center. It needs to be democratically controlled so that people are actually, it's generating community wealth instead of community destruction. There's more always. I'll end it there though.
Thank you. Thanks, Bryan. So it looks like we probably have time for about one question per speaker, and we're hoping to do a mix of questions from the room and online. So maybe let's take a question here first. Let's first hand here. Yeah, go for it.
In your presentation, you had that there's some obstacles we need to work around and there's some things that the legislators need to be doing. And my question is going to be to you, legislators. I'm old, forgive me, okay? That we need to have the courage to do something. So my question to you, three, do you have the courage? Now, I have seen you all. Well, you get out there too. Okay, all of y'all then, okay? I have seen. All right, all of you legislation people. Do you have the courage to step out and do something different? I saw a presentation, and this was very good. I appreciate you all. The best air quality was in a cemetery. That is utterly ridiculous. The best air quality was in a cemetery. Do you all have the courage to step out and do something that is different? That is innovative, that is creative. Make some noise. I'm not saying to fight fire with fire because I don't necessarily believe that. But I am saying you have to do something different. You also need to come to us, the residents. How can you help us so that we can help the rest of the residents? We want to do the right thing. We do not want to do the wrong thing. Do you have the courage, all of you, answer my question, to do something different?
Can the legislators in the room raise their hand? So these are all of the legislators that are in this space because of one thing, right? We want to ensure that Wisconsin's energy future is one in which all of our communities have the freedom to thrive. And to go back to the one thing you uplifted about air quality, someone right there, this woman right here, Robin Bryan, has consistently in her committees, in community, talked about the fact that if we're going to talk about our energy future, if we're going to talk about solutions to the things that our communities are navigating, we need to address air quality. Especially because the folks who live on the margins are the first folks to be impacted by the problem. So yes, we have the courage. The purpose of this and all of the other conversations that will be happening in this series, as well as conversations that labor folks are having, as well as other stakeholders who have been emailing our offices about what our energy future should be, is to figure out what innovative solutions we can implement here in a Wisconsin model to ensure that our communities have the freedom that thrive.
Okay, thank you.
Hi, I'm State Representative Supreme Moore Makunde. I'm not asking a question. I'm asking if the elder could make sure that everybody knows her name so that when we remember who asked the question and who have to be responsible to. That's my old boss from when I was on the county board. If you can make sure everybody hears your name.
My name
Yes,
is Miss Burnett.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Okay. We have one more question in the room.
Is there any movement to make something in a social media form that is easily digestible for the masses, such as a TikTok, where you do something as simple as put a show experiment of how global warming actually works, so that these things are visible to people who don't have this education. Like something as simple as put a small heater in a fish tank and show how that small heater eats the whole fish tank. Or it's these simple things that these people do not have the access to. They didn't have science classes growing up. Or even something as simple as just like, hey, these are your legislators, this legislator, whatever, you know. And then tell everyone what you're thinking of, what you want to do, what you're trying to do, what you are currently working on. And in ways that for other people to work on things. What can we do? How can we help you?
So what I'm hearing there is a strong request both for creativity and how to educate the public, but also empowering the public to participate in the solutions. People want real things that they're doing.
Did you want to respond to that?
I wanted to respond to that and also say a couple things. So it's great to see everyone and see you in different contexts, particularly protecting people from lead in homes and all the work along the way. I'm Representative Margaret Arnie, and what I'd like to talk about more is the capture of these systems that were originally put in to be the voice of the public, that systematically that has been eroded and captured, and it isn't functioning the way it is. I'll bet you that if everybody here shows up at a meeting, that might be something where we can start. There's a lot that needs to happen. We have something called the Citizens Utility Board. It seems really not effective. It seems like we have appointees from our Democratic governor that are voting in lockstep with the interests that are not promoting renewable energy. I mean, there's pretty basic ways that people can show up and just say, this is wrong, we need to do it differently. And, because I know when Wisconsin put this together, people were really serious about representing what the people want. Wisconsin, we have a progressive history that's really pretty badass. And we need to
Yeah, so for folks online, what we heard there from Representative Margaret Arnie was just what I heard was a sentiment that we have these processes that originally were designed with real meaning behind them to have real teeth, and that those processes have really been captured and are really not doing what they're designed to do. And I can certainly say that from our perspective at Healthy Climate Wisconsin. Like I said, we helped run the biggest campaign in PSC history, and they basically said, yeah, that was great. A lot of you showed up, and we're not going to think about anything that you said. So I echo that.
Real,
Yeah, yeah. But we'll keep doing these. We are at 1:02 here, so I want to respect everybody's time. If you both want to close it out.
Yeah, absolutely. Just to go back to the question real quick. There's a lot of efforts in which folks are using every tool at their disposal to share information. Raise your hand if you're a part of the freshman class of legislators this session. So these folks have been implementing the use of all social media tools to bring folks access to what's happening behind the closed doors in this building every day. So if you follow their pages, you can find out a tremendous amount of what's happening here. But raise your hand if you're a part of Generation Z in this space. Me too. I'm a part of that generation. So, so real quick, I want to uplift that this past week, young people, specifically from that generation, my generation, have filed a lawsuit against the state because of the impacts of climate in our climate future. The amount of responsibility that young people are taking in this moment right now to ensure that we're fighting for a climate in which their children, right, not your children, for the other folks from other generations, but yes, your children too. I mean, it is what it is. Has the freedom to thrive. And that burden shouldn't be on them, but they are using every tool at their disposal to make it happen. And they know how to use them. They know how to use TikTok, they know how to use all socials. Follow those young people and demand more of us, right? To share more about what we're doing. I post all the time about what's happening. I know Larson does. I know those freshman legislators do all the time. If you follow our pages, we will continue to do more. And again, this series is a part of that continuum. Larson, want to close this out?
Let's do it. I just want to again massive appreciation for the time and energy put forward by our panelists here today. I would hope that if nothing else comes of this, that all four of you develop a good TikTok and start putting this stuff out there so that it is digestible. And it's hard to understand, to throw your arms around this huge problem, which, as outlined by each of you, is on purpose, right? It's to obfuscate and conceal the hand that is smothering us right now, and that is what's happening. So, which is why I'm proud to partner with Representative Madison and partner with each of you in taking the time to make sure that our colleagues understand this, the folks in the building understand this, and the folks in the public understand this. We'll try and do a better job of making sure we get the information out for the next two. They're going to be on the next 2 Wednesdays hereafter, but the work doesn't stop with these. It's only the beginning. So let's think of this as the starting gun, and the next session we'll dive into possible solutions and what we can do moving forward. So I hope we'll leave it with that as a cliffhanger to be continued.
And if everyone in the space could do one service at sharing the information about the next session, right? Because we want to ensure that more folks are in this space. And if we all do our part, we know that more folks will be in the space next time.